What is up, Sleepers Media fans? I'm back with another mid-major matchup of the week. Selfishly, I'm out here on the West Coast, and I wanted to talk about one of the teams I'm going to see in person this week, and that's Santa Clara. They only have one loss on the season, and it came in sort of dramatic fashion over Feast Week here, so I'll talk about that a little bit. But they're playing Utah Tech. If you're like me, you probably thought, who is Utah Tech? Are they a Division One team? And the answer is yes, but barely. This is actually their second year to be eligible for the NCAA tournament. They moved up from Division Two a few years ago, so last year was their first full season where those sort of eligibility issues for postseason play had been cleared up for them. So they're officially a full member of Division One who could make the tournament if they win their conference, the Western Athletic Conference. They were picked seventh of seven teams in that league in the preseason here, but I think they're better than that. Santa Clara is the better team here. This is not one of those ones where I think it's a 50-50 game. It's just an opportunity to showcase Santa Clara, who I think is one of the best mid-major teams in the country. And because they're in the West Coast, they probably go a little under the radar here. What Herb Sednick has done for Santa Clara is really impressive. And I think they just deserve a little, more pub here. So happy to do it on the channel. They have four straight seasons of 20 plus wins. They've won, had consecutive winning seasons for seven of the last 7 years. So uh, they're a good program and they're close. They can never really get over the hump. This is a team that produced Jalen Williams, the Oklahoma City's good Jalen Williams, Brandon Bajemski for the Warriors, Adama Alpha Ball last year. I think will eventually, stick with an NBA team or at least get a couple, maybe a handful of cups of coffee in the NBA here. Not sure if there's an NBA player on this particular roster, but it wouldn't surprise me. Herb Sendek just has like a knack for grooming and developing those kind of players, especially guys that are like heliocentric guards and playing through them. It's also a guy that coached James Harden once upon a time. There are no James Hardens on this roster, I don't think, but there's some good dudes. So we're going to get into all of that here. Let's just go through who they've played so far. I mentioned 7-1. They blew out Cal Poly Humboldt in the beginning of the year. Not a big deal. They beat McNeese State, which is still a pretty like good leftover group there by double digits. They beat Xavier by almost 20 points, which is a down Xavier team, but it's still a Big East team that they beat by 19. They beat Nevada by 15, which is also pretty good. Idaho State, they had a tougher game against them than some of these other teams. They beat them by 9, 64-55, so they were able to win in a rock fight. They played the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns and beat them 80 to 43, which that's mid-major on mid-major crime if I've ever seen it. They did lose a nail biter to St. Louis, who is a really good mid-major team themselves, who could make a like a real NCAA tournament run if they can get through the A10 and get there. They played in the Kreischer Invitational over Feast Week in Palm Springs or Palm Desert, technically, I guess. So St. Louis beat them 71-70. And this team just rebounded and said, you know what, we're going to beat a Big Ten team to close out the tournament here. They beat Minnesota, who's at least feisty this year. This is a largely Big Ten channel, so you're listening to this. You know Minnesota is not the cream of the crop in the Big Ten, but they're better. The bottom is better for the Big Ten this year. Minnesota has some dudes, and Santa Clara just got it done. They beat them by double digits. It was 86-75. I didn't really feel like that was a particularly in doubt game, and they got some big time performances from some of their big players. Christian Hammond is kind of the guy that stirs the drink for this team. In 26 minutes, he had 20 points, which was pretty impressive here. They couldn't slow down Cade Tyson, who had 29 points for Minnesota, but did a good job on everybody else and held them to under 30% three-point shooting for the game, while they themselves shot 51% from three. So pretty impressive performance right there from Santa Clara. I mentioned Christian Hammond. He's a 6'4" guard, averaging 16 and a half points per game, about four rebounds, shooting 42.5% from three, which is pretty impressive. Then we got Elijah Mahi, 6'7" forward for them, 13.3 points per game, 4.3 rebounds, also shooting a little under 35% from the forward spot, which is pretty good. And then they got Buki and Boye, excuse me, 7'1" center, 9 points per game, only 2.7 rebounds, which is crazy, but 2.4 blocks per game. He's up there in conference standings. He's pretty far up there nationally in blocks per game, which is pretty interesting. And then another name you may have heard a little bit here in the offseason that made some noise. They have Thierry Darlin, who comes in from the G League. He was with the member of the Delaware Bluecoats in the G League last year. not really doing a whole lot. Doesn't start for this team. They list him as a 6'8" guard. I don't know that he necessarily has guard skills, so it may be a little bit of a misnomer there. But he's averaging 5.5 points and about 5 rebounds, shooting 35% from three, only 37% from the field. So not really translating particularly well to mid-major basketball coming down from the NBA minor league. So kind of interesting there. But Darlin is an interesting use case for college basketball, and I kind of respect Herb Sendek and those guys for being clever. Like these guys showing up on a Louisville or something like that is not as shocking, I guess. But a dude that's played real minutes in a professional league in the United States showing up on Santa Clara's roster, I think is particularly noteworthy. So just wanted to shout that one out a little bit because he's a name that he may play just enough for him to do something here, or maybe he figures out pops. This is a very international friendly roster here. Let's say they've got a Bulgarian, two Canadians, a Frenchman, someone from the Central African Republic. They've got a German. Like they'll take dudes from wherever they get them. Only one guy from California on the whole roster, which is kind of funny. This is a team that scores about 81 points per game, only gives up 64 and a half. They shoot 46% from the field. Opponents only shoot about 39%. They're shooting 33% as a team from three on the season, despite that 51% against Minnesota. They're holding opponents, though, below 28%, which is pretty good. They're out rebounding teams by about seven. They don't turn the ball over a lot, only 10 and a half per game. And they're converting pretty well on those turnovers that they do force. So they're forcing 14 turnovers from their opponents, and they score 17 and a half points off those turnovers. This team is a really good shot blocking team. There's length at a lot of positions here, which is another interesting wrinkle here and why I think it's so hard for a lot of these mid-major teams to compete come postseason. They don't have the size, but these guys have length at a lot of different positions, and I think that'll serve them well against some of this Power Five level competition. And we've already seen it against some of the A10 level guys and things like that here as well. Big East team, a Big Ten team. So they've got that. And I think another team in their conference, San Francisco, can do that a little bit. St. Mary's can do that. So this could be like an interesting year for the WCC if they don't beat up on each other so much that they don't get at large bids. This would be an interesting team to see in the tournament, I think. And that's again why we're wanting to talk about them. That 6.5 blocks per game, 6.4 to be accurate blocks per game, is first in the WCC. A team that includes Gonzaga with starts, basically two 7-footers in Graham EK and Braden Huff. But that's eighth in the country overall, which is really impressive. They're the top team in the West Coast Conference in 3-point attempts at 27.5. 3-point percentage defense, they hold teams to under, like I said, under 28%, which is really good. And the turnovers per game is really good. Only turn the ball over 10 and a half points or times per game is tops in the WCC. They're up there in assist to turnover ratio. In scoring defense, holding teams to 64.5 points means you're a good defensive team regardless of what your schedule is. And like I said, they've not ducked the smoke, so far with that scheduling. Steals per game is pretty good at 8.5. Turnover margin is really impressive here too. So like this is just a good group of dudes. And I think that this Utah Tech team is like plucky enough to test them. So you'll get to see the best of Santa Clara on display here. So again, this is just a good early season opportunity to pick them before WCC play kicks off and just put you guys onto a team that if you're like me and you like to stay up late and watch West Coast basketball, this is a team to dial in on. So just putting them on your radar. This game is at 7 p.m. Pacific time, so that's 10 p.m. Eastern time. I'm not particularly good at time zones, so I got to say that more for myself than anyone else. The game will be on ESPN Plus, and it is here in Santa Clara where I am currently, so I will be at this one in person. So I'm excited to just see these kind of two teams match up just a little bit more on the Utah Tech side. Their coach, John Judkins, this is his 21st season at Utah Tech. He came over with the program after spending all those years in Division II. He's got 343 wins, which is really impressive. Like I said, they were picked seventh in this conference going into the season. I think they are just better than that. And this will be their last year in the WAC. They're going to head to the Big Sky next year. So that'll be pretty interesting. They've got dudes from higher levels of competition. They have somebody that played at Georgia, somebody that played at Dayton, someone that played at St. Bonaventure. So not total slouches. These are guys that are reclassing for that opportunity to play. They're 5-5 on the year, but most of those wins have come against sub-Division I competition. Let's just get into their games against some of the meaningful teams on their schedule here. So they did play Arizona. They lost 93-67. Not ideal. They lost 81 to 66 to Arizona State, who is just not a particularly good Power Five team. So not a great result there either. They lost a close one to Manhattan, who I actually think is like a better team than they're probably getting credit for, 79-75. They beat Mississippi Valley State 81-75 in two OT, so not afraid to go out and win a close game in overtime. So this is a pretty well-tested team. Hawaii is like kind of scrappy, and they had a tournament out in Hawaii that Utah Tech participated in. Hawaii beat them 68-62. And then this team lost to Portland State, which is not great, 68-63, but then bounced back and beat UC Riverside 77-69. So they're coming in on a win. Again, not a great team. I by no means am I suggesting this is like a particularly dominant mid-major or dark horse team that's coming in here. But they're enough, like I said, to test Santa Clara, and that's who I really wanted you all to be able to focus on. A couple other things just on Utah Tech before we get too far into this. The big name to know is Ethan Potter. He's 6'8". He transfers in from Utah Valley, actually, where he spent a couple years. Didn't really play a ton because he was behind guys like Carter Welling, and Carter Welling is doing really well this year for for Clemson. So no slouch here that Potter didn't get a ton of minutes behind him. He's averaging 17 points and 7 rebounds. Again, a really good low post scorer. So I'm excited to see what he does against Mahi or Boye or one of these other big men that Santa Clara can throw at him and just kind of see how they match up. I got Chance Trujillo, 6'4" guard, averaging 12 points per game, 4.5 rebounds. Noah Belonga, 6'8" forward, kind of a bouncy dude. And then Jushan Holt, 48% three-point shooter, bouncy athletic wing. So I think he's actually probably better than maybe folks would realize. So I'm excited to see what he does in a situation like this as well. So we've gone through the records and results for you. I think again the key matchup here is just if Ethan Potter can't get going for this Utah Tech team, I don't really know if they have another dude that can have like a big game and kind of put them on their back. So he needs to be able to find ways to score against this large Santa Clara front court. Santa Clara is 51 in Ken Palm right now, which is pretty good. Like that's the makings of like an at-large resume just about at least analytically they're in the fray. And like St. Mary's is 35, St. Louis who beat them is 54. Those are good teams and they're in that mix, which says a lot. San Diego State is 48. Like this is a team that can hang. A lot of power conference teams are worse than that. You know, my Terps are like in the 90s at this point, so don't sleep on Santa Clara, I think is kind of the message of this entire preview at this point. Let's find Utah Tech here. They're 255th on Ken Palm. So they're facing an uphill battle, I think is pretty safe to say at this point in time. So prediction wise, I'm going to go Santa Clara by 17. I think something in that neighborhood seems reasonable just based on both teams' respective resumes so far. But I think it'll be a good enough game, like I said, to put a lot of things on display here. If this was, 81 to 64 or something in that neighborhood, it wouldn't totally surprise me. And yeah, just want to see some good mid-major basketball. Focus on Santa Clara, and hopefully this game lives up to its billing. I'll be back to recap it after being there in the building, and we'll catch you guys up more on the Sleepers Media YouTube channel here.